Hey, I hope you watched our first video a few minutes ago. If you didn't, I would encourage you to go back and watch that one first before you watch this one. Otherwise, this one's not going to make a whole lot of sense. We're looking at Romans chapter 13. And in this video, we're looking at the last several verses of that chapter. So starting in chapter 8, going through verse 14. Basically, if you did what I'd asked you in the first video, you would have read through these verses and understood the fact that Jesus was most concerned, and Paul was trying to reiterate this fact, that at the end of the day, we simply have to love people. Matter of fact, he summarizes everything in verse number 10. He says, love does no wrong to a neighbor, therefore love is the fulfilling of the law. In other words, if you want to do everything that you're supposed to do as a believer, as a follower of God, and meet God's code, you simply need to love people. So he lists a bunch of things that are here in verse number 8, like you're not supposed to owe anybody anything except to love them. And then he goes on in verse number 9, talked about how, the law says we shouldn't cheat on our spouse, or shouldn't murder, or shouldn't steal, or shouldn't covet. But he finishes everything up in that verse in verse number 10, that to love someone means you're not going to do anything wrong to them, and therein you fulfill the law. So if you want to be perfect, then you love people. That's it. And then the second part of this, it starts in verse number 11. Basically, Paul tells us, he goes, wake up. Things are different now. God is not doing the same thing that he did before. And so if you are a Christian, you're a follower of God, you belong to the church, you have a responsibility to get into the world and live differently. He says right here in verse 11, besides this, you know the time that the hour has come for you to wake from sleep. In other words, wake up. We live differently because of what Christ has done. We love people in a way that the world does not love people in, because Christ loved us in that way. God has defined for us through Jesus what it means to live in his kingdom. And that's what Paul is getting at. And so he says in verse 13, we should walk properly as in the daytime. Doesn't mean you're not allowed to go out at night anymore. That's not what he's talking about. But he lists off a bunch of things here that are wrong, that are evil and sinful. And he says, basically, look, these things lead to darkness. They lead to death and destruction. We need to no longer give in to these things. But in verse 14, it says, but put on the Lord Jesus Christ and make no provision for the flesh to gratify its desires. In other words, we're supposed to say no to what our flesh, our self desires, and we're supposed to live differently in this newness of life that he's been talking about in the rest of the book of Romans. This is the capstone of everything that he's been discussing up to this point. And so as I finish this up, I want you to understand this, that Paul expected the church in Rome, and consequently God expects us to love each other, and that includes our government. Doesn't mean you have to love everything government does, but it does mean you have to love the people that are there and respect them and honor them. It does mean you have to love the people that live on your street that maybe are obnoxious to you. It does mean you're going to love the people that have moved to our area from other parts of the world that may not fit in or may not look like you do. It is going to mean loving the people that you go to school with that maybe don't have life as well as you do, and maybe just think and act completely differently than the way that you think life should happen. It's going to mean loving your family and the people that live in your house in a way that honors and glorifies Christ. And that's it. Love does no wrong. So if you want to fulfill your responsibility to God, then you are simply going to love people and not give in to your fleshly, sinful desires. Now, yes, you need the Spirit of God to help you with that. Yeah, that's not easy to do, but you can do it through the power of God's help that we've been talking about all the way up through these 13 chapters of the book of Romans. So that's a wrap. That's it. This is the end of Romans chapter 13. We're done with these videos. Like I said in our first video this week, we are going to meet together on September the 20th at the 11 a.m. service. And I hope you're going to join us there and make time to be with us. But go ahead and finish reading the book of Romans. 14, 15, 16 are great chapters you should do. We will continue to be here for you. And we're going to continue to do some really cool things with student ministry. So I'm looking forward to hanging out with you in person. We will see you in a couple of weeks.